Our next presentation is going to be part indoor, part outdoor. So we'll cue you at the right time. We'll get to take a nice little walk outside and show you the great short course here at Virginia. To begin, I'd like to introduce Dr. Allison Kurt, one of the standout professionals in our section. She's a PGA Master Professional in Instruction, an LPGA Master Professional, and one of only 9 women to achieve the PGA Master Professional distinction. She has a playing background at Florida State University, where she earned a degree in psychology and professional golf management. She's received numerous awards and accolades for her excellent instruction. These include she's a 4-time LPGA Western Section Teacher of the Year, an LPGA National Teacher of the Year, an SCPGA Teacher of the Year, Golf Professional of the Year, and Hall of Fame member. She's recognized as one of Golf Digest's best young instructors, best in state, and as a top 50 instructor with the LPGA. Dr. Kurt earned her master's in clinical psychology and her doctorate in clinical psychology as well, with an emphasis in sports psychology. Sorry, it's your fault. She continues to play competitively and has played in 7 LPGA Tour Major Championships, helped the USA win the inaugural Women's PGA Cup in 2019, captained by Miss Suzy Whaley. She's a 6-time SCPGA Omega Women's Player of the Year, and she's made unbelievable contributions to our section. She currently serves as secretary on our SCPGA board and is an active member of the teaching committee. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Allison Kurt.
Thank you. That was such a nice introduction just to introduce our next speaker. I appreciate that. I'm so honored to be able to introduce our next speaker because she truly means a lot to me, and I know she's touched many lives in this room. Suzy Whaley is a history maker, or a her story maker, we should say, in golf industry and golf business, teaching and coaching, and in playing. Golf Magazine Top 100, Golf Digest Top 50, LPGA Top 50, 2-time Connecticut Teacher of the Year, multiple Hall of Fame, including the 2022 Connecticut Women Hall of Fame inductee. Suzy Whaley has been honored incredibly and immensely for the people that she has inspired to play better golf and for the accomplishments that she has achieved in teaching. In fact, she's influenced nearly 300 juniors to move into the collegiate ranks, which is pretty phenomenal to touch that many lives in her teaching span. I think that she has more airline miles than anyone in this room, including some of our PGA Tour teachers, as she jet sets all over the country, president of Golf Nation, and commentator and analyst for ESPN and ESPN+. As I say, she makes history where she goes. First female president of the PGA of America, for anyone who was in the room when that happened, it happened in Southern California, out in the desert. The power and the energy at the annual meeting when she was elected was profound, and it's something that I know that I'll remember forever, as many of us shared some tears sitting next to each other when that happened, because we knew the PGA was moving in a fantastic place under her service and her leadership. That led her to have to captain some PGA Cup teams. And several weeks ago, she led the USA team to victory with our own Michael Block, who was on the team, as they beat Great Britain and Ireland. But in 2019, she was captain of the inaugural PGA Women's Cup team, which I had the privilege to play on. And to spend the week with Suzy, learning from her as a coach, being under her tutelage as we took home the victory, is something that I'll never forget. And of course, there's always fun stories that pop up during that time together, and one of the most memorable stories happened in the locker room. All great things happen in locker rooms, right? Before we were heading out for opening ceremonies, the 5 girls who were on the team were a little nervous, kind of like the first tee jitters going into a major championship. Walking out in front of our friends and family and 5 other PGA countries in these beautiful polo outfits and these really high-heeled Steve Madden boots. We were nervous about tripping, walking on grass in high heels, breaking an ankle, And Suzy gave us a very fantastic coaching moment in how to walk gracefully in those heels without tripping in front of everybody. After we finished our practice rounds, we were talking about how to chip off Bermuda grass and how to beat these other countries and what were some of our strategies. And a couple of weeks earlier, Team USA had also won in 2019 at Barton Creek, and there was a miraculous shot that Bob Sowers had hit on the 18th hole to secure his match, which led USA to victory. And I'll describe a little bit of this par 5 18 hole, but the chip that he had was incredibly difficult, super downhill, and you're on this incline. He had about a 20-yard carry and about 4 feet, 5 feet max of roll. So a ton of spin needed to be put on this shot. So after our practice round, we decided that we wanted to try out the Bob Sowers shot. We all drop a ball. 20 feet is about the best that we can do. Suzy comes over, she takes a club, drops down a ball, and she holes it out. And we're like, wow, she still has some mad skills. And she's had those mad skills when she set history again in her playing career. In 1945, Babe Zaharias was the first female to play in a PGA Tour event. In 2003, Suzy was the second female to play in a PGA Tour event. She won her Connecticut PGA Section Championship and was exempted into the 2003 Greater Hartford Open. That's some major history right there. We're so grateful to have her here with us today, taking some time away from her spouse, her 2 daughters, and her 2 favorite black labs. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to my friend, mentor, Honorary President Suzy Whaley.
Maybe just leave it. Okay, that was so nice. I feel like Allison should be up here teaching you, not me. That was incredible, and thank you so much, and congratulations on everything you do. And what she failed to mention is they all threw out the boots as soon as we were done, literally, because I was the only one that could walk in the heel, because I had done it way too many times, and I picked out the boots. Lesson learned for a group of incredible athletes who did not want to wear a high heel at our PGA Cup matches. It's my honor to be here. First of all, Tom Addis, you gave him a round of applause, but I am here to tell you, as somebody who sat in the seat, Tom Addis is one of the most progressive presidents we've ever had. The ideas he had when he was president, we're still trying to accomplish today because we should have done them then. And he saw all that and saw the vision of that. And we're still going off many of the things that he accomplished today. And I still think about the conversations that I've had. I'm just grateful for the conversations that I've had with him that helped me along the way in governance. He's always been an advocate for me. He's always been a supporter. He's always been a truth teller. And I'm here to tell you, you have one of the best sections in the country because of Tom Addis. So thank you, Tom. And his wife, Susan's a delight, too. And then Nikki, I don't even know what to say about Nikki. Nikki is amazing as well and has always stepped up to anything you've ever asked her to do. Anything I've ever asked from her, she stepped up. So my point is, you just have an incredible section, and I just want to make you aware of that because I've been behind the curtain. I've seen all the sections, and you're in one of the absolute best. So thank you. Also, thank you for being here. I think it's a choice to be at a teaching summit. I think it's something that I know you've taken time away. I've attended hundreds of them. I'm a lifelong learner. I do not claim to have all the answers standing up here. My teaching philosophy has changed dramatically from the time I started to the time I finish. And every time I come to a summit thinking I know what I'm talking about, I leave realizing I have a lot to learn. So if there's something today that I can't answer for you, that you have a question about, I'll get the answer for you. But I don't sit here claiming that my way is the only way or what I do works for everybody, but I'm just going to share with you a few things that I do in hopes that you get to take away something that may spark something in your teaching and help you along the way create customers for life. I'm going to talk to you today about a couple things, and then we're going to head outside to do a little on-course with Allison, who didn't know she was doing that with me until literally this morning. So when she gets up there, I hope everybody will be very kind to her as she's trying to run a marathon for PGA Reach. She literally ran 20 miles last week. If those of you don't know what it's like to run 20 miles, I'm one of those people that doesn't know. I can only imagine how her quads and hamstrings feel as I try to teach her golf on the tee today. But we're going to go over my journey, so don't get bored with that. I hope you don't get bored with that. We're going to go over an evolution of my teaching style and the tools that I use. We're going to do some case study work. I'm going to show you some things that I use in my instruction and some new things that I use in my instruction. And then I'm open to anybody asking me anything you want to ask me. Again, just be nice. Okay, so first we're going to go over my journey. I can't do that without talking about my family. So my husband Bill is a PGA member. I'm not sure everybody's aware of that. He's been a member longer than I have. He works for the PGA Tour, and he's worked for the PGA Tour for close to 28 years, overseeing the TPC properties in the golf operations around the country. We have 2 daughters, as was mentioned. These were my puppies when they were puppies. They're now a year old. That's Gracie and Lulu, the loves of my life, other than the 2 that are holding them. That's Jen and Kelly. Kelly is playing in India this week on the LET Tour. She's an A3 member of the PGA of America. She's working incredibly hard trying to make it to the LPGA. We're not there yet, but she's had an opportunity to travel to 10 countries this year and play golf around the world. I told her to stop kicking her head in on the Epson Tour and go see the world while she kicks her head in. So my husband and I, both having played on the tour, know what a grind that is. All of you that teach tour players know what a grind that is. So fingers crossed for Kelly this week in India, but she's loving it in the moment she's in. She's 25 years old, and we're going to let her do it as long as she wants to give it a go. And we're going to take all those phone calls and those tears along the way. Our older daughter, Jen, she's 28. She's getting her MBA at MIT in Boston. She also played collegiate golf, but she wants to go into the sports industry in an executive capacity. So that's what my family is doing. Allison hinted at this before. My husband says I have far too many jobs. That's true. I'm still the honorary president for a couple more weeks. I took on the presidency of a television company in March called Golf Nation. We launched in 2023. We are filming content for brands to tell their stories in not linear advertising, but v-commerce and e-commerce with everything to do with the game, community, charity, celebrity, outside of championships. So we're coming to your door soon. I'm going to be highlighting PGA professionals around the world, and we're going to showcase who you are and what you do in a way that's pretty incredible. We just launched a deal with Vizio to be on 30 million screens as a channel. So I'm incredibly excited about that. So keep your eye out for Golf Nation. We're not launched yet, but we do a soft launch in November, and I hope you'll take a peek and see what we have to offer. So I have to put my glasses on for this because the slide's too small, so sorry, I'm old now. So this is a crazy journey, and the reason I put this slide up here isn't to tell you everything I've ever done, because that's boring. What it is to tell you is your career is not going to be linear. For those of you that are young, that are sitting here in the audience, keep your mind open, because there are things that I do today that I could never have imagined I would be doing in the golf industry. When I was an officer, people thought I just stopped teaching. Right? When I took on the governance role, they're like, well, you don't teach anymore, right? I mean, I was still teaching 60 hours a week when I was an officer. So there's going to be things you're going to take on that are hugely challenging. Many of the things on here for me were incredibly challenging. But I've always found the people I've met along the way in those challenges, the people like all of you in this room, have helped me get through those challenges, and people will help you too. So as was mentioned, I played on the LPGA Tour early on. I've been an assistant golf professional. I became a PGA member after an LPGA member, because if you could imagine, back then they didn't let you become a member of the PGA of America unless you worked a 40-hour work week. And I had 2 babies, and I wasn't working a 40-hour work week. Thankfully, the PGA of America didn't lose their minds and figured out that they needed women in their association, and to do that, they should probably switch that rule, which they did, which was great. So I joined the PGA of America in 2001. I've been a head golf professional. I've been in section governance. I played in a PGA Tour event. I've been a commentator early on. I'm back to being a commentator. I've run my own business, Suzy Whaley Golf, and sold that business. And I've been a master professional, which I'm super proud of, because I'm a lifelong learner, as is Allison. And then, obviously, we already talked about what I'm doing today. So I'm sure I stole this somewhere along the way. I'm sure this is not mine, so please don't take it as mine. But this is what I believe. This is who I am. I think great coaching takes kindness, positive reinforcement, shaping steps. And what I mean by shaping steps is small snippets of learning. I'm a teacher who started out throwing, literally regurgitating everything I knew at every student I had. I did whatever I did in my lessons, whatever drills I was using, they were now using. I should give all the money back for the first 3 years I ever taught, and figured out very clearly that my students were not getting better. And I didn't understand it. And I remember going home to my husband after about 3 years of that and saying, I don't get it. I work so hard, I teach people every day, why aren't they getting better? And he looked at me and said something very casual and said, well, have you ever asked them what they want? No. Doesn't everybody just want to be a scratch golfer? He's like, absolutely not. You need to start asking people, what they want. And if you think about your teaching and you think about who you are and what you do, kind of figure out what you're doing when that student walks up to the tee. What are you demanding of them? What are they demanding of you? And do you actually really know what their goals are? 90% of them are going to say consistency, right? And they don't even know what that means. So I always say back, oh, excellent. So what does that look like to you? What is consistency to you? And I think you'll get a multitude of answers that you're not expecting. Some of them will say distance. Some of them will say in the air. Some of them will say, I'm sick of hitting it on the toe. Some of them will say, I have no idea what to do from the top of my backswing to the bottom. But they'll give you the answers to the test if you ask them. Just make sure that you're communicating with them in a way that they can understand. And keeping your student at ease, I think that's kind of been my key, is making partners for life. They know I'm not a one-off teacher. They know once they walk up to my T-top, they have my full attention, and I'm in it 100% with them for that time period. So whether you teach a half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, I'm here to tell you my first hour every day is as strong and as good as my last hour. Because it has to be. People have choices. There's 1,000 things they could be doing other than standing with you on a lesson tee. But they've picked you, right? And that's a huge responsibility, that they've picked you for that hour of time. And I think it's our responsibility to give them the hour, right? I'm not a watch looker. I don't look around. I'm not on my electronics other than for coaching and teaching when I teach. If I need a break, I don't book, right? If I can't make it to that last hour, and I know it 8 days in a row or 7 days in a row or 6 days in a row, I'm not going to book it. Because every student that comes to me knows they're getting 100% of my attention. They're not getting the PGA of America crud that comes in my emails. It's not crud, it's nice stuff. They're not it's been a long time I've been in that room, but Tom knows what I mean. They're not getting my Golf Nation stuff. They're not getting my commentator stuff. If my family buzzes in, that is the only time that I may excuse myself, but I'll often say, look, my daughter's traveling overseas. I need to take this because she knows not to call me. But that's it. And I honestly believe as PGA professionals, that's your responsibility to do that. So here's my teaching philosophy. As I said, this is morphed literally year in and year out, but this is where I am currently, right? So I used to just want to correct people. I used to just wanted to fix their weaknesses. I'm sorry, I can't see you if I have these on, but I can see this if I have these on, so I apologize. So now I've realized over the course of the last 10, 12 years that I'm more about building on strengths than correcting weaknesses. You heard it yesterday multiple times. You heard it from Dave Phillips. You heard it, I apologize, I don't remember his name, the gentleman who was amazing, that is Cam Smith's mental coach. You heard him say the same. At the end of the day, people's their motor skills really are truly difficult to change, inherently and mentally. But what I can build on is their strengths, and certainly I can address their weaknesses, but I have a much better chance of making them a better player by making their strengths stronger than I do them making corrections in an hour time. So overcoming their weaknesses, building on their strengths. I'm huge into self-correction. I talk very little in a lesson. I don't say much. And you heard that yesterday too. And people will stare at me and look at me and wait for me to say something, and I smile. And that takes a lot of guts as a teacher not to say anything. But I think when you don't say anything, you're going to get their real intention, and you're really going to understand where they sit in the place that they're in. So I ask way more questions than give answers. And I'll give you some examples of that in a few minutes. I absolutely do teach for speed. I teach a ton of juniors. And because I teach a ton of juniors and a ton of women, my breakdown is about 65% male and about 35% female in the adult space. My breakdown in the junior space is about 50-50, boy to girl. But because of that, I absolutely teach for speed, because my adult females who are 8 handicaps and up, they play more golf when they hit the ball farther. And I am not of the mindset that I can't get a female to increase her speed based on lack of athleticism. That's a crock of crud, right? You can absolutely get women to swing the club faster. They have to be taught how. There's many older women. I teach a group of older women over 65 years old that didn't have PE in school, that weren't allowed to do sports growing up, that have never been taught how to transfer weight, that have never been taught about ground force. They are willing to put the work in. They want to play golf. They want to do it better than 55 yards or 55 miles an hour, right? And I believe wholeheartedly all of us in the room are capable of getting them there. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of what I was just chatting with you about. So when I first started teaching, I gave students all the answers. I'd say things like, you need to do this, you should look like this, your feel is this. I would mimic, I would hit balls for them, I would show them. Right? Can you imagine being a student and just having me hit balls like for 10 minutes and being like, just do it like this? Like, seriously? Like, they'd be like, are you gonna be kidding me? I'm paying her for this? Right? But I still see that happening today. I have no problem with imagery. I have no problem with mirroring for a student. But if you're hitting shots for them in short game, or you're hitting putts for them, or you're showing, I'm here to tell you most of them aren't relating, not for a second. So I just don't do that anymore, because for me, it never worked. So instead, I make my students talk through it. I had this wonderful man, a behavioral scientist, come watch me teach for the weekend because I wanted feedback. His name was Ed Feeney. And I wanted feedback on why my elite juniors weren't getting better. And this was, probably 15 years ago. And he gave me pages and pages of feedback on my instruction, which to this day I still use. But the number one thing I took away from that was active learning and your students' sense for active learning. And I never had my students in an active learning mode because I was preaching and telling, and they weren't actively participating in it. They were just listening. Now what I do with my students, and they usually do it on their phone now. Obviously, 15 years ago, they did it with notes. But I actually make a student stop during a lesson when we've had a breakthrough, a short-term breakthrough, because that's what they are in that hour period of time when you're making changes. And I actually have them write down in their own words what they felt, what they think they look like, and what they believe got them to that point. I don't give them the answers to that. I just have them write it down. And what I found in the active learning process is they parrot it back pretty beautifully at the end of about 30 minutes. If I don't do it that way at the end of 30 minutes, they get in the car and they tell their parents, I don't know what we did today. It was a good lesson, but I don't know what we did. Or you have an adult who will say, oh my gosh, yesterday I hit it so great with Suzy, and today I went on the golf course and I can't remember a thing that we did during the lesson. And I'm here to tell you there's a lot of students that are leaving you with that mindset. Well, that was really good, but there's just no way I can repeat it. This gives my students an opportunity to actually pull that back out, to shoot me a note. So when I give them a voiceover, because all my students get voiceovers after a lesson, every single lesson I do a voiceover. Once they get that voiceover, they can refer to the way they thought about it. I have said that in my notes. This is the way you were thinking about it, not the way I'm thinking about it. And I think if you try it, I think you'll be shocked at how much faster your students get better. What would you like to accomplish? How would you like the ball flight? What do you want to look like? All those questions are questions, right? I'm not telling people what to do. My teaching tools, I've gone through so many teaching tools. Please don't think that I'm not being paid by any of these companies. I'm just telling you what I use today. You saw 4 sites today. I happen to use TrackMan because I own it and it travels with me everywhere. I don't have a building, so please understand that I'm teaching on a grass tee top, no building, no cover shots, and all my equipment is in my hands, right? That comes with me. So I don't have a fancy set of force plates. I use stuff that can come along the journey with me, and I'm sure a lot of you are the same. If you have a building, I'm incredibly jealous, and I'm working on getting one of those buildings as fast as possible so I can get out of the Florida sun. But this is what I use currently, and happy to answer any questions about all that. All right, what you've been expecting from me. Right? You are going to get a lot of females on my presentation because I get sick and tired of going to teaching summits and only seeing PGA Tour players and no LPGA Tour players. So today, you're going to watch some LPGA Tour players, which I hope that you enjoy. And that's no offense or disrespect to anybody that's presented. I'm just here to tell you that it's very rare you get any data on women. And I'm working with a company now that is actually developing a ton of data for women, which I'm super excited about. But let's just go over some basic things. This information and the case study information I want you to know came from Phil Cheatham, right? So the data that I'm going to be showing you, I just want to give credit to Phil for the data and the analytics, this slide as well. So we all know this, right? But it's about inherently digesting this slide for a second. So men have more muscle mass, we know that, 40 to 50%, women have less, 30 to 35%. Men have a lower percentage body fat, totally unfair. So literally from the time you pop out, it's inequitable, right? Because you have less body fat, which I just don't understand, and why genetics and selection hasn't fixed that at this point, I don't know. I'm still hopeful. So we have higher body fat because we have to carry children. I get that, but it doesn't have to be so far apart. Men have more fast twitch muscles. Why is that? Why is that, seriously? Genetically speaking, why do you get that? Also unfair and also inequitable. Every guy in the room's like, okay, so. And women have slower twitch muscles. Why is this important? Why do you have to inherently know this? Because this is what you are facing when they come to your lesson tee. And what I'm going to try to prove to you today with data is that the best female golfers' swings in the world are not that far off from the best male swings. But what is different is their muscle mass. What is different is their wrists and their strength in their wrists. However, we can get more women playing great golf with great sequence of motion because I'm going to show you that it's happening as we speak. However, you're going to have your outliers, you're going to have your female LPGA Tour players, you're going to have your female golfers at your facilities who hit it a really far way. But on average, women are just not going to have a swing speed similar to men because of this slide. Okay? It's genetics. All right. Having said that, I want to share with you what I'm currently obsessed with. I want to preface it with the data is still slightly imperfect because you're not wearing sensors. So I know that. You don't have to tell me that. We still are a degree or two off. As the AI progresses and as virtual reality progresses, the algorithm will continue to learn from swings that go into the programming, and it will get closer and closer to a much better standard. However, for now, I'm going to share with you what this company does, what I use it for. I'm going to show you using Allison what she wants to work on and how she uses it. I also want to share with you I am an advisor for Sportsbox. I am not paid by Sportsbox and I'm not an investor, but I am an advisor of what I think we need as coaches as we move forward if we're going to use a tool like this. So first of all, the picture, the 2D video ability, that's with my iPhone. That's just a face on, 9 feet away, screenshot video of a student. Okay, so I'm taping a student from face on. That face on turns into the 6 positions that you see in 3D. I haven't moved, I haven't done anything else other than stand there and take one video. So it's going to show me face on, it's going to show me down the line, it's going to show me behind, below, back from the target, which is a feature I love, and from above. And the reason I absolutely am obsessed with this right now is because I've realized very quickly that my 2D, not positioned perfectly, or the angles from 2D, or when you commentate on television, the angles are never correct for where the camera is. So oftentimes you're going to hear a commentator make a comment and you're sitting in your house going, what are they even talking about? That was so not what that just happened. You have to realize that the camera is on a separate angle from where our commentator is actually speaking. So when I commentate, I try very hard not to do corrections unless the camera's dead where I want it, and I'll ask the producer to put it where I want it. Otherwise, you're not going to hear me address a swing because it will be off kilter. But these, we don't have that issue with. So this is what you get to see. So it has high data optionality. These are the metrics that you can track on Sportsbox AI. So there's mid-hand sway, mid-hand lift. I'm not going to read them all, but you can see them all there. That picture is a video, obviously 2D. It has drawing tools within the 2D model. So those, I just drew some lines so that you could see some lines. Speaking of which, that is my niece Phoebe Brinker, who is leading the Tar Heel Classic. So if I stop for a second to check my phone, that's what I'm checking. She has 3 holes left to play. If anybody's on GolfStat, if you could let me know what's happening, that would be great. But she plays for Duke, and that's a bummer. So having said that, yeah, because I'm a Tar Heel, so is my daughter. But she's going to win the Tar Heel Classic today, I hope. Having said that, she's an All-American, and I'm going to show you a couple more swings of hers as we go along. But Phoebe, this is Phoebe, and then you have voiceover. You see the microphone top left. You can flip her right, left-handed. And there's also a tempo tracker, bottom left. So most of you that study PGA Tour and LPGA Tour swings know 3 to 1's about the average, 2.8 sometimes now. We wind out about 2.8. She's actually at 2.6. So if you're looking for backswing tempo, you have like MB Park, Nancy Lopez, who probably run at like 3.4, 3.5. You have some male tour players that run higher than that. There's standard deviations for everything I'm going to show you today, so please know that's in small writing at the bottom. These are all just averages. But the multiple things you can do with this, and I'm going to show you more of how I use that and how I relate it to my students, inclusive of new beginners, inclusive of people that all of you are teaching on a daily basis, and how you can use it for them. So I'm going to talk about some of the parameters. Stop me if you want to stop me on any of these. We'll go through them kind of quickly because I think I'm getting verbose and I know we want to go outside. So you can see this is Nelly Korda. Nelly Korda is one of the best players in the world right now. And as Nelly Korda is making her swing, you see the numbers bottom left. You see them moving. The arrow that I have up there, the orange arrow, is tracking turn. That's chest turn. That's the data that I'm receiving, keeping in mind that this is a face-on 2D capture. Right? And it's showing me an avatar in 3D. So let's talk a little bit about chest turn and what chest turn means and what we found in the data set, the scientific data set that Phil's found. 103 males in this and 24 women, so the women's data set is quite small. As I mentioned, we're working on making that data set as large as the male data set, but this is only 103 males as well. So let's just look at the graph for a second. So what happens in these players' golf swings, right, is as you can see at address, typically on average, most male and women are open with their chest at address. You look at the backswing max and the top of their backswing, you can see the men are closed 92 and the women are 103. Keeping in mind that standard deviation runs almost 10. I'm not saying there aren't men that are 101. But the reason for that, as we all can imagine, is flexibility. Women are more flexible than men. They have an easier time rotating. As you get to impact, you can see the chest is open, 29 degrees for men and 32 degrees for women, and for the finish, 154 and 160. So when I first started diving into some of this data, and you look at the graph and where these things are changing within the graph, what you can see in these chest turn numbers is every single one of them, the pelvis is more open at impact than the chest. All of us know this. You know, we all teach that. Right? But when you have the opportunity to actually see what your student's doing with real data numbers, instead of on 2D, I think oftentimes we can get lost in translation of how much more open do we want their pelvis based on the ball flight that they're looking for, and what is their sequencing doing? Is their arms keeping up with their lower body and with that chest turn? So that's chest turn, and then I'm gonna fly through some of these, but anybody's welcome to this. I'm happy to send it, and you don't have to worry about memorizing any of it. So this is pelvis turn. This is Nelly's pelvis turn. So again, slightly open at the top. You can see the transition is before the top. Remember that they're going the opposite direction before they actually get to the top. And at the top of their backswing, women are a little more closed in their pelvis than men. At impact, they're far more open than this data set shows than men. And you can see the finish is the same way. Again, flexibility is at play here. The arrow is what's tracking that pelvis turn. If you go to chest sway, so chest sway, as we talk about chest sway, we're talking about away from the target and we're talking about toward the target. A being away, T being toward. So anything you say away or toward. But if you look at the backswing max here on the top, you can see the men are away, 1.3 and 0.2. And you can see the women are away 1.4 and 0.5. I mean, that's pretty darn close. But 100% of them are towards once they get to the top of the backswing. So think about that for a second. We're talking about the chest, right? So as they're getting to the top of the backswing, they're getting a reverse in their chest, and then their chest sway is actually moving to the left, 100% of them at the top. I think oftentimes when I teach especially women or young juniors, you're never going to see that. You're going to see that buggy whip that they're trying to flip that club. And there's a point in time where that's actually going to create issues for them in their chest and their side bend. So you have to be very careful of that and realizing the best players in the world are all towards at the top. And if you look at impact, you look at 0.1 away, 0.9 away, but you can see on the downswing, when they get to about parallel in the downswing, you can see they're towards, and then that chest sways back the other direction. Again, stuff everybody in here probably is keenly aware of, but without data. And now you actually have some data that you can track this with. You look at pelvis sway. So pelvis sway is one of the differentials, I think, between LPGA and PGA Tour players. So if you watch Nelly, who's one of the longest ball strikers on the LPGA Tour, and you look at what's happening at her backswing max, which is 1 away and 1.1 away. If you look at the top, 0.3 towards, but look at the women, right? So at the top of the backswing for PGA Tour players, for most male professionals, they are strong enough to already be going toward the target. And one of the biggest, longest ball strikers on tour is still away from the target. That's something we really have to think about, because if you look at impact and you look at the lateral motion of the pelvis in males, they're shifting 4.3. Keep in mind this is an average, 4.3, but the women are only shifting 3.1. Right? That's a huge differential. Men are already past address at the top. Women are still back and behind. And then women are less forward coming through their downswing finish than men. And what that turns into, if you look here, so you've got 3 to 4 inches is normal. But at their finish is almost relatively the same. So if you think about forces and you think about kinematic sequence, if we're teaching women to post harder, which I'm not saying you are, oftentimes you're going to get their sequence out of motion, because for them to post as hard as a male that was just standing there with you, their wrist strength isn't strong enough to hold up to that, and they're either going to bury it in the ground or they're going to come out of it and spin coming through the golf ball. So it's just one of those things that I think you should be aware of when you look at these numbers in pelvis sway. I'll just do a couple more. So chest bend. Chest bend is what I was just talking about, which is almost a reverse at the top of the backswing. So the chest goes forward. It has a forward bend. It has then less bend, which is that slight reverse. Then it has more bend as you start down into impact, less bend, and then a back bend. So think about that on people's bodies, right? What's really happening as you watch these golf swings? So again, that number is tracked there, bottom left. But at address, most men and women are pretty similar. At the top, they are not. Women tend to tilt more toward the target at the top of their backswing. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. Am I echoing now? And then at impact, 22 and 22, and then downswing, 38 and 35. So you can see how these graphs start to work, and you can see how the sequencing works. And the question that I would be asking if I were you is, what do I pick? Right? That's a lot of information, right? And I am certainly not showing my students every parameter that I can show them. First of all, half of them can't see it because they're too old and it's too small on my iPhone, which is fabulous. So I get to see it and they can't see it. But secondarily, I think you have to understand the components of sequencing so that you learn these graphs so you know what to attack first versus what's just an effect. I'm always looking to attack the cause of the problem. Oftentimes that's, Dave Phillips shared with us, oftentimes that is something, a root core anatomy issue that you have to address prior to being able to address any of these things. However, there's many of these things that I think you may be getting fooled on 2D. Right? I certainly was. There were times where I thought some of my juniors weren't rotating enough on 2D, and I put them on this. In fact, last week I put a young man on this. He was rotating 111 degrees with his chest and 58 degrees with his pelvis. I'm here to tell you, that ball is going all over the place because it's across the line. It's either going to go right or left, no chance. And I'm standing there like, thinking his rotation looked great. I threw him on this. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? Why are you so all over the place? He's like, oh, well, I was watching a YouTube video, and it told me that. I'm like, oh my, can you stay off that? But so then we got it cleared up like in 15 seconds and right down the middle again on his way to his next AJGA. Right, so just, I think there's times where certainly those of us who have taught a very long time think we got it, and there's times where I'm sorely wrong. And this has certainly been helpful for me to see those places, and that's when I use it. I use it when I'm a little lost. I'm like, everything looks good. I don't understand these numbers that we're getting on TrackMan. I throw this on, I'm like, oh, well, there it is, okay? Pelvis lift, this is huge for women and men, don't misunderstand. But this is where I think women that I teach that are, again, are not excellent players yet, do not understand how to use their pelvis in a way as they get through the golf ball. So Nellie does it pretty much the best, but you can see in her pelvis lift, if you look at what happens, so the pelvis drops on the downswing, it lifts, and then it stabilizes, right? And that's using the ground. We've talked about that over and over and over again to help you gain speed through impact. But if you look at the differentials here, just take a quick peek at this, how close men tour players are and women tour players really are. I think it's fascinating to me how LPGA tour players get what they can out of their golf swings with less muscle mass, and this is how they do it. They do it very closely related to a male player. So again, the pelvis drops during the backswing. The max drop of the pelvis is before impact, and then the max lift is after impact. And we've all seen that with, you know, young girls that hop on their toes. Please let them hop on their toes. If you are telling them to hold their feet down, you are crushing them. They will not play college golf. That's my lecture for the day. Okay. Here's a friendly face. Does everybody know who this is? Anyone? Anyone recognize this golf swing in slow-mo? You should. He's your 9-time section champ. This is Michael Block making a guest appearance unbeknownst to Michael Block. All right, so the reason I have Michael Block on here is Allison hinted at it. Michael, are you here? Oh, great. Okay, so Michael was on the PGA Cup team, as Allison mentioned a couple weeks ago at Fox Hills in London. And Michael rolled into town, and only as Michael can, he says, Cap, I'm going to get you 5 points. I'm like, I can't wait. That's fabulous news. Let's go out and practice. We go out and practice, and I'm watching all 10 players, and I'm hopping between groups and seeing what I have, because some of the players I haven't had a chance to play with before. I've had a chance to play with Michael and a few of the others in tournaments, but some of them I didn't know their games. I was trying to figure out how I was going to pair them up and who would be the best together and whose personality would match whose. And every time I got to Michael's group, he was messing around with his clubs. He was changing his shaft and his driver. He was changing the launch angle in his driver. Every single tee shot, he was changing something about the shot and the head. And you got to realize that as a coach, you have to watch that for a second, right? I am not Michael's teacher, nor do I claim to be Michael's teacher. So that's also something that's in the way, right? Because I want to say, what the hell are you doing? Right, we're here to play a golf tournament, and you're messing around with your shaft and your club head. I don't say that. I know better, thankfully, I'm old enough. So instead, I just watch what's going on. And I can see him yesterday, that gentleman said, losing competence instead of confidence, right? I love that, by the way. If you're here, I love that. And I wrote that to my daughter, too, by the way, so I hope that helps her today. But there was no confidence in his driver, and this is Player of the Year, 8-time section champion in the moment of time, and I'm seeing his head just spin as a coach. So I let it go, and he says, well, I'm going to go hit some balls. I'm going to go down the range. I'm like, okay. Off he goes. Next day, same story, same thing, still a practice round. But now I've had it. So he's like, I'm going to go to the range. And the range wasn't long enough to hit drivers. You had to go over to the 9th tee box to hit drivers, which was perfect because nobody was around but Michael. And I knew as a coach who has done this a very long time, if I just drove down there and stood there, he would start to talk to me, right? In a way that I wasn't saying, what's happening, or can I help you? Do you want me to tape your golf swing? Do you want me to look at it? I didn't say any of that. I just stood there. And after about 3 balls, he goes, I can't hit any of these. And I said, nothing. I just looked at him. He said, I don't understand. He goes, and then he gives me the answer to the test. He goes, I know I'm swaying way off the golf ball, and I just can't seem to get centered. Ding, there's your opening. I said, huh. I said, I have this cool app. Do you want to check to see how far you're swaying off the golf ball? Because I knew darn well he wasn't swaying off the golf ball, right? I had watched him for 2 days. In fact, he was doing the opposite. He was trying so hard not to sway off the golf ball. His arms were running way away from his body. And then he was giving me a huge pelvis slide through, trying to catch up, and his arms just couldn't get there. So he was hitting huge blocks and big hooks. But I didn't say that to him. I just said, hey, you know what, do you want to take a look? I can show you exactly what your numbers are. He's like, heck yeah, I want to take a look. So this is what we did. So this is the video that I took. I'll play it again for you. Right? So I just highlighted chest sway and pelvis sway, because that's what Michael told me he thought he needed. And I knew I wasn't going to interfere with his competence by just showing him what he thought he was trying to look at. Now keep in mind, if this was a beginner, I'm not just going to go what they say. I'm going to give them what I think they need. But this isn't a beginner. This is one of the best players in the country. Right? So this is what I showed him. And what you can see here is if you look at chest on the left, that's Michael's, and you look at tour chest, the men, and then you look at pelvis and you look at tour pelvis, on his backswing, he thought he was swaying his chest way off the golf ball. Right? He's swaying it less off the golf ball than PGA Tour players. At the top of his backswing, yeah, he's a little bit higher than PGA Tour players. If you look at coming down, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit less, a little more, sorry. And then at impact, 0.5 and 0.1. But this data right here does not say you're swaying off the golf ball. And he's like, that can't be right. I know I'm swaying off the golf ball. So we took another one, and it was just the same. And then if you look at his pelvis, however, you're going to see a dramatic difference in lateral slide coming in on the downswing. Right? That lateral slide is because he wasn't actually swaying his chest enough on the backswing. He's looking for power, trying to reconnect his arms as he came down, getting stuck, as we all call it, right? And death move for him. All right, so what did we do? So I said, okay, well, you can see that's not what's happening. So what if you just made your chest and your arms connect a little more on the backswing, right, where your arms didn't run away from your body, and you let your chest move a little bit more than you're doing it? He looked at me. Yeah, I could do that, right? Like literally like 5 in a row, right down the middle of the fairway. Now, I'm not here telling you that he hit every drive great during the PGA Cup matches, but he left there and did not change the head, did not change the shaft for the rest of the week, decided it had nothing to do with that. We gave him one little clue that convinced him that we're good to go, and he thought he was good to go. And he ended up winning 4 of the 5 matches. He birdied 4 of the last 5 holes to win our opening match, and then got on an airplane and flew here and won the section champ. So the story, the tale is, no, it wasn't some magic coaching moment, but it was knowing not to talk. It was knowing letting a great player be a great player. And it was knowing what to show them that wasn't overwhelming in a tournament moment. And that made the difference for him. And I see Jamie looking at me, which means we probably have to go. Do we have to go, Jamie?
All right, you're doing great. We're going to go outside, though.
OK. So can I give 2 more examples and then go out? Or yes or no?
Yeah, you can.
OK.
Not to rush it, do the 2 examples, but we got a big day today.
OK.
And,
I'm so sorry.
Let me
Too long.
We got a big day today, so when we leave here, we're just going to walk to the walk. So we're going to just turn left, and it's over by our 18 holder. So we'll walk over there. We're going to stop down real quickly, and then we'll go into our outdoor presentation. You're doing great.
OK. So sorry. So sorry. All right. All right. Sorry. I get too verbose. I apologize. All right. So I'm just going to show you one more. I have a couple more in here, but I'll just show you this last one. So this is Nelly Corda on the left, and this is my daughter, Kelly, on the right. And the reason I show you this is Kelly's had a rough year. Kelly's been trying to change who she is, in our opinion. Her dad's in my opinion. She's always hit a big draw. And she started thinking in her head as she played with better players that she had to learn how to hit the ball from left to right. So Kelly started swinging left with her hands and arms, which is so in vogue right now, changing her swing direction as well. Her dad and I weren't huge fans, but she's 25, and we're like, all right, let's see what you can do with that. And she's really struggled because her translation of swinging left was swinging everything left, okay? And that's just not going to work for anybody, especially for a young girl who's hit a long draw her whole life. So we have stolen Kelly back from the world of swinging left, and I'm going to show you what Kelly's really doing that's hurting her golf swing. And when I showed this, are you any parents of golfers? It's like brutal, right? I mean, it's brutal. Like, there were times where it wasn't a great parenting moment where I'd actually say, do you know people pay me for this? Like, people pay me, and she wouldn't listen to me. So it's not a prideful moment, but it happened. Okay, so at the end of the day, Nellie's on the left, and what I really want to make very clear is when I look at pelvis lift, and I didn't show you chest bend, I should have showed you chest bend as well for Kelly. Kelly is trying incredibly hard. Because she's trying so hard to swing left, she has translated that into staying down the entirety of the golf swing and going even lower down and going to the left. It took me showing her this for it to click, for her to go, oh my gosh, I get it. I get what I'm doing. Instead of the club's getting stuck behind you, stop flipping it. I mean, that's her whole brain, right? I'm trying to stop flipping it. I'm just trying to swing left. If you look at these lift numbers and you look at Nellie versus Kelly, sorry for the name rhyming. At the top of the backswing, Nellie is 2.4 down in her pelvis. At the top of Kelly's backswing, she's 3.8. So think about that for a second. Think about how low she is at the top. How are you going to get out of the way for that golf swing, right? And then you get to impact. Kelly's figured out a way to come up, but she can't possibly come up like she should because she was too far down. So her speed is going to decrease. Her center point of contact is going to be harder to hit, low and high face hits. Her max through finish is 1.1 up for Nellie. Kelly's only 0.8. And then if you look at the finish, the differential there. But what am I going to address with Kelly? I'm going to address the top of the backswing. She already knows how to go down. She just can't get back up fast enough, so I'm going to address the top. We did that last week after her event in New York. We did it by phone and by this. She's had a really good practice round today. I have no idea what will happen in the tournament itself, but this is where we're going to continue to strive for her. And thank heavens for the first week in probably 26 weeks, my girl isn't thinking about flipping it and swinging left. Not flipping it, and instead swinging left. Instead, she's thinking about target and staying taller at the top of her backswing. Simple is always better. I have others. I apologize. I think I went too long. But this is just a way that I use this. Again, certainly don't feel like you have to use this. I have ways that you can check it out and sign up for it if you choose to. If you don't choose to, that's fine. If you want these slides, I'm happy to send them. Sportsbox also has a certification that you can go through, and most of these slides are in that too. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for your time. What I was saying, if you couldn't hear me, is I'm going to attempt to get this to work. So hang in there with me if it doesn't work, because this is the first time I've used something like that, which I'm super excited about, because you'll actually be able to see the data as we're taking it. The one thing about using your phone, if you're my age or above, I hate teaching in readers, but I can't see the numbers on my screen. So I just want to be clear with you that if you're using this and you have bad eyes, it's frustrating that you can't see the numbers. I'm also going to do it two different ways for you. I'm going to show you what I often do, which I often just take a slow-mo video of the student, I edit it, and then I import it. You don't have to do it that way. The reason I like to do it that way is it gives me an extra second to edit and shrink the photo, which takes it a little less time to upload and download. But you can keep your students in folders. You can keep them in they're called sessions on Sportsbox. Allison, as I mentioned earlier, did not know she was doing this, so give Allison a round of applause. Where are we hitting to? We're hitting this way? We're hitting this way, Allison? Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to let Allison hit a couple balls so she can just warm up for a second. But as you can see, there's no wires, there's no sensors, there's no bodysuit, there's no setup time, there's no nothing. I also don't have this on a tripod, which I would get yelled at by Phil Cheatham because I'm going to be holding it, which means the data is going to be imperfect because there's no way your hand can be as still as a tripod. If it's on a tripod, it's fine, but we're just going to do it this way for sake of fastness. Okay.
Fired in any direction you want to. She's even par through 14 holes.
Okay. That's not good. All right, so you know what? I'm going to see if we can capture it behind you. So basically what we're doing is you want to be about 9 feet from the student, which, yeah, I'm about 9 feet from the student. There are times it'll say swing and a miss. That just means your hand shook or you're too far away or something like that happens. So if that happens, bear with me. I'm going to let Allison hit a couple before we do this. Are there any questions from what I talked about earlier? Anything about coaching, teaching, players that I coach, teach? Yes?
Was that data all with the driver you were given there? Was that driver?
Yes. Yes. The bend certainly changes the most. The irons, the bend certainly changes the most. More bend with an iron than with a longer club. Not that much. I can get you that data for the irons too. What happened?
I just need to know how far it is.
Oh, let's go with 65. How far is this, everybody? Does anybody know? No? Where's our foresights guy? Yes, you can. So says me, who does not work here. Yes, you can. Perfect. Yes, yes.
Are you doing all the editing and everything on the phone, or can you transport that to
You can even do this on an iPad.
an iPad or
Yep.
computer? Okay.
Yep. And then when I do my voiceovers, I typically do them on my phone right there in the lesson. So I made the mistake early on in my teaching to do my voiceovers at home. And I'd wait for the end of the day. Please don't do that. You're working for another 2 hours when you get home, which is absurd. So these people are paying you for your time, and part of that time is your voiceover. They know that they're going to do a drill while I do their voiceover. And I do all my voiceovers during the actual lesson, which just takes a little practice and a little fortitude, because your student's going to be like, well, can't you just watch me hit one more? Nope, I'm doing your voiceover. But you've got your drill. Anybody else? Yes?
The tour data,
Yep.
does that come with the app or?
Yeah, you'll have all that. And there's a certification that comes with it, and that's all in the certification. Yep, all of it. And it's updated constantly. Because as I mentioned earlier, the way an algorithm works is the more tour data we have, the better your data will be. Same for the LPGA. And then a lot of us that are ambassadors are sending them. You know, I have probably 15 All-American females that are collegians on mine, and you know, I just send those to them so they have that data too.
What
Yep.
would you say is the difference between teaching and coaching?
I think teaching is a skill set. I think you're teaching mechanics and the biomechanics of the golf swing. I think coaching is the entirety of the platform. I like to develop a whole athlete. So for me as a coach, I feel like I'm their confidant. I feel like I'm their psychologist. I feel like I'm their swing teacher. I feel like I'm a person that's safe and they can trust and rely on in moments of challenge, because they're going to face challenge more than they are going to face winning. And so I think a coach is all-encompassing, and I think a teacher is well-warranted. But I like to be considered as a coach. I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I think you're both when you're a coach. But I think if you choose to be in the golf business, the reason I'm successful isn't because I know more than any of you. I think I'm successful because I make the person that's with me feel like I'm in it with them 100%. I'm in it with the down, I'm in it with the good, I'm available, they know they have my ear, they know I have my attention, and I develop a real authentic relationship with every one of my students. And that just takes a lot of energy. So I tell people, like, you don't have to be a coach. Right? You can be in this business and be a teacher. I just don't know that it would be as fulfilling for me to just be a teacher. I find great satisfaction in relationships, and I enjoy people. It's probably why I do what I do, and I think as a PGA professional, I have this gift to change people's lives every day. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I do what I do because I have the chance to do that. And I don't know that a lot of professions give you an opportunity like that. So I love what I do. I find joy in what I do. And I think the people that I'm with feel that from me. And then we have a better mix as a coach than as a teacher. So, and I've always called everybody that was in my life, because I'm a huge athlete. I've played 4 sports my whole life. They were all coaches to me. I didn't call my ski coach my teacher, right? I called my English teacher my teacher because I hated English. So my mom was an English professor, by the way. So she loves that I just said that. Okay, any other questions before I do this? No? Okay. All right, so as I said before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this the long way. If I had entered Allison as a student in my platform, I could just tape it straight from the app, right? But I didn't do that, so we're going to do this the long way. So I'm going to stand just 9 feet from her. I'm going to try to stay as still as I possibly can because I'm not on a tripod. You want to get exactly centered to her as best that you can. I have it on slow motion. This has to be taped on slow-mo. And I think you guys can see what I'm doing, right? Yeah, that's not good. Do we need an arrow up there or something? I mean an umbrella? All right, so basically, can you see what I'm doing? You can't, can you? All right, so what I'm doing is literally taking the edit down. When you tape, all of you who have taped in slow-mo understand that you can't possibly know when the student's going to start. So I've just, you see the yellow box there at the bottom? Can you guys see that? So I've just clipped it. That's all I've done is clip it. I'm going to save the video as done. I'm going to head into the app. Again, this is the long way, not the easy way, but for those of you who just want to try this out on a trial basis, is an easy way to do it. So I'm going to import.
Try to flip it sideways. Flip your phone sideways. Does that do anything?
Those apps aren't landscape.
Not landscape. I don't know why it's black like that. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, you guys. Okay, well, I'll try to talk through what I'm doing. So right now, it's just taking Allison's swing, and it's literally loading it into the algorithm. I'm going to name it Allison. Can we flip it around for a second, and then maybe it'll cool off? I think it's probably just because it's too hot, right? No? All right, so anyway, it's generating a 2D video right now, and then it generates a 3D video. I'll just talk you through it. And then it just generates a 3D video. The one thing that was uncomfortable for me when I first started using this was the time it took to generate. It's going to take about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. That doesn't feel like a long time unless somebody's staring at you, right? They're staring at you, waiting. They're looking at you like, what's happening, what's going on? So you'll find a way to chat about whatever you're talking about or look at whatever you're talking about it. So right now, it's just finishing up the 2D capture. Now it's generating a 3D capture. I'm sorry that you guys can't see it.
Hey, Suzy.
Yep.
Does the phone or the device that you're using require a certain level of camera or anything?
Yeah, I think it's, and I'd have to ask them for sure, but I think it is iPhone 10 or up.
And does it work Android?
But don't quote me on that. It might be a 9. I can't remember.
Is it iPhone only?
No. No, you can do iPad too, so long as the camera is new enough that it can capture and transfer to 3D. The older iPads will not work. Like my older teaching iPad would not work. But you can also do that. You can screen share to your iPad, just like I'm trying to do here. Can you see this at all? Yeah. I'm sorry. Anyway, you can see how Allison's on the left. That's her golf swing on the left. And then you can see the 3D on the right. And all I'm hitting down here, like if I only wanted to look at the 3D, there's a little box here that you could look at 3D, or you can keep it as 2D, or I can keep it as both. On the very bottom, I'm just going to switch to the P1 positions. Those are all the positions. It already has tallied that for me, for where impact is, where downswing max, where backswing max is, where top of swing is, where impact is. And Allison and I chatted a little bit. So let's just pretend Allison is here taking a lesson from me, and I never met Allison. First of all, did anybody notice 3.1 there on the left? That's why Allison's such a good player. You see that? All right, so basically, here I've met Allison. I have this, she's never met me. Incredibly intimidating to take a golf lesson. I don't know if everybody believes that, but it's true, right? And if you don't believe it, go do something you've never done before and take a real lesson. And you'll get the actual feeling in your belly of, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? I'm going to embarrass myself. What's happening? I always try to be a beginner at something every year. This year is kayak year. Okay. Well, you can't be that bad at kayaking, right? All right, so I'm going to say to Allison things like this. So, how can I help you today? What are you trying to accomplish today?
So I'm looking to avoid the left miss. Take my left. I got my
Okay, okay.
I want to avoid the left miss, so oftentimes I will have a little bit of ground contact first, and then I'm missing my greens left or I'm missing my drives left. So I want to eliminate the left curvature.
Okay, so, oh, I guess we're sharing. Maybe we should share. Yeah, we'll share. Okay, so for those of you that didn't hear her, she's trying to avoid the left miss. She wants to change that curvature in her ball flight to avoid the left miss. The next thing when I ask Allison, because obviously if you watched Allison swing a golf club, you know she's played a lot of golf in her life. I may not ask this to a beginner, but I'm going to ask Allison. Allison, do you currently take lessons, or is there something you're currently working on?
Yes, so I consult with different types of coaches just to get their advice and then integrate. I consult on occasion with a couple of different coaches just to kind of get some advice and integrate that into my own system. So right now I'm working on more rotation to get the lead arm deeper in the backswing and keep it more abducted through impact.
Okay, so that in itself, if somebody says abducted to you, you know they've taken a lot of golf lessons and done a lot of studying. Do not panic, because you know what? Good for her. She knows exactly what she's trying to accomplish. And when we chatted earlier, I asked her what she was working on, to be clear. And you know what we decided was she's really looking for that X factor stretch. For those of you that doesn't know what that means, it's the stretch between your chest and your pelvis rotation on the downswing. The X factor stretch. She's trying to increase that. She's trying to increase her pelvis turn through impact. Do I have that right, Allison? So if we were talking about that as a coach, you could, I wish you could see this, but these two blue areas right here, all I highlighted were chest turn and pelvis turn, because that's going to give me her X factor stretch between those two models. But it's also going to show Allison where she currently is at impact. So literally if I went down to the bottom screen and hit her swing positions on here and went to impact, top of swing, and then went to downswing max and then to impact, her chest turn is 14 degrees at impact and her pelvis turn is 28. And if you looked at those slides that I gave you earlier, that's about half of what an average LPGA Tour player is. So she's on the right track for what she's trying to work on. Now as a coach, I have to figure out how to get her to do that. A couple things I would ask her next are, Allison, do you have any injuries?
No injuries, but definitely muscle soreness and tightness from current hobbies.
What is the next? And this is where it's so important. So I made this mistake as an interviewer when I first started commentating in 2005. I was thinking so hard. I'm so sorry, you guys. I was thinking so hard about my next question, I didn't listen to their answer for the question before. And if you think about that in your instruction, if you already know what you're going to say, and then they give you something like that, you're going to miss what the issue was. You're going to say, okay, let's get busy. Let's get that hip turn more. The next question is what? What's the next follow-up question?
Hobbies.
What hobbies do you do, Allison?
So currently the hobby of the day is running. So I'm training for the New York City Marathon and putting in a lot of miles on my legs.
Okay, so she said abduction and she's running in a marathon, right? So at the end of the day, so what do you know as a coach if she's running in a marathon? You know her hamstrings are brutally tight, you know her quads are brutally tight, and her hip flexors are shot, right? Because she's running every single day. So you have to have an expectation in your head of the amount of improvement you can make in the time you have with her. You have to ensure she's in some sort of physio programming so that she can actually accomplish what she's trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you're going to be, you're going to be beating your head against a wall because you know you're telling her things she should do. She's just unable to do them. So the easiest way I would tackle, I'm not going to hit any more balls because we don't have a screen. Oh, we do have a screen. Oh, look at that. How did that happen? Okay, so I don't know. Can you guys see these turn numbers? Chest is, oh, Jesus. How's it going? How's it going so far? Chest 14 degrees and pelvis 28. We want that pelvis at least 42, and we want that chest at least 30, 32 at impact. But mostly because she wants to avoid the left miss, what has she done? Yeah, she just stopped. She's like, that's not going over there, right? And now she's controlling it with her arms with the face, right? So I'd say you've lost power probably too recently. So basically what I would share with her to do now and then long term is we would come up with a plan long term if she wasn't with a physio, if she wasn't with somebody that could give me an evaluation. I work with TPI at my club. I have 2 TPI fitness specialists at the club. I do not do the evals anymore. I used to do them a long time ago. Now I have somebody else do them for me. The first stop she has is going to be to a TPI eval, where I can get her information back and where we really are and where her flexibility really is. But for today, we still have 45 minutes to go in a lesson, right? So what are we gonna do? So A, I don't hurt her. B, she sees some progress, and C, she understands what her drills are gonna be. The very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna open her left toe, right? You really don't wanna know what I'm gonna do. So that's the end. No, so I'm just gonna open her left foot just slightly without changing her swing direction. So be very careful, because when most women open their left toe on you, they're going to pull their left foot back. If you're not paying attention, you won't see it, but most women won't just go like that. They'll go like that. And they'll open up their hips more, and they'll open up their shoulders more. Most men, in my experience, will just go like this, and they don't move their leg. So you just got to pay attention to that. But what is that going to do for me? It's automatically going to open that left hip up for me. It's going to give it a little bit of room and a little bit of breathing room, I call it. So she actually has an opportunity to increase that lower number. But that's the way I use this. I'm sorry it was a little out of sorts for how you could see it work. But I use it as extra. It's not the only thing I do. I rely on my 30 years of coaching to help somebody. I rely on ball flight. I rely on ground because I'm on a T-top. I'm not in a simulator environment. I rely on TrackMan. But I don't use it for everybody. And I don't use my TrackMan for everybody. I think you have to be consciously aware of what people are telling you. I think you have to inherently understand human behavior and human nature. And I think if you realize every day it's just about changing human behavior in a way that makes them feel successful when they leave, you will kill it in your coaching. Yes?
Do you find that there's a correlation as to why females drop the left foot back as opposed to just flaring it open like men?
I wish Dave were here. I'm sure Dave would have a better answer than I do. I don't have a scientific reason for that. I just know that the women I teach, who I would say at least 50% of, I would consider unathletic, but love golf, just think when you tell them to do something, they just, okay, open your left foot. It's just a motion. It's not like open your left toe, open your left. When you ask a female to put her ankles underneath her armpits, she puts her feet underneath her armpits. And I'm generalizing. Not all women do that. But when you ask a guy to put their ankles under their armpits, they're like, why? You know? And women just go, okay, and their feet get super narrow. So I don't know if it's human nature. I don't know if it's anatomy. I'm not skilled in anatomy. I just know my biomechanics from golf swings, but I can't tell you if there's a reason. I think it's probably hip width, to be honest with you. But I don't want to say that because I don't know if I'm right. Yeah.
I'm going to take a 30-second intermission and see if
we can
get things going. We got to switch
Oh, okay.
The old pack
Is that what's killing it? Whatever you want.
Oh, that's your pack? Oh, we're getting interference. Oh, so if you're recording, you're going to need that then.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So that's okay. We'll keep working with it.
Okay.
No, don't be sorry. Can you still hear me? All right. Good? Yes? Good?
Yay.
Yes? Okay, any other questions before we have another mic issue? Yes? Yep. Yeah, so here you go. Sorry, I should have showed you that. So if we go back to the actual photo, and if I go to view, turn it sideways for you, can you see that down the right-hand side? So if I want to see down the line, there she is down the line. If I want to see below, there she is below. If I want to see from behind, you see from behind, right? And so let's say if we were looking at view, I'll give you an example of some things I use. So if I were looking at, sorry, it's super hard to see this in the sun. If I were looking at some trackers that I wanted to track on her, so let's say I wanted to track her mid-hand sway and her mid-hand lift for whatever reason, I would probably use a down the line shot, right? Because if you look at down the line for hand path, right, and then I went back to being able to show you. No, it's okay. I just have a tent that I use, right? But can you see the yellow lines and can you see the red lines there? I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's tracing her hand path. So if I'm working on hand path, I'm going to use a down the line image, right? If I'm working on early extension, I might use the image from target back. So you can actually see the hands kind of work out and away. If I'm working on bend, I would probably use above, right? I rarely use below, to be honest with you. But most of the time, and I use a lot of from behind. Because from behind, it's very clear to see rotary. I think more clear than it is, for me, than down the line. But every single 2D image turns into 6 different ways you can look at it.
Is the information club specific, like when it gives you the averages, is that for a pitching wedge versus?
The ones I showed you today were drivers. Yeah, but yes, you can put in the club. There's a whole thing that you have to put in male or female. So we have trackers and really cool watch lists designed in here. So let's say you're trying to get it. Let's say you're trying to get a. Let's say you're trying to get to a student to a certain. Let's say you're trying to get a student to a certain range. I don't know if any of you use KVS. Do any of you use KVS? So there's ranges in there. So you can set the range yourself, or you can use a tour range. You can set that for practice for your student, and it will turn green when they get there. It will turn red when they don't, and then yellow if it's close. So you can also set trackers on their swing and their voiceover that you're sending to them, so they can use the app on their own. They can film on their own, and they can see if they've gotten into that range. So you can click on all those, and then when you load a student, which I didn't show you or walk you through, it is female, male based. It is hip width based. There's a reference guide, so you'll know approximately hip width. That matters for your hip and pelvis numbers. You'll put those in. You'll put a height in there, and you'll put the club. So and you load that up literally when you start your session. If you change the club during a session, you just go back and change the club. Yep.
I noticed that the head is down a lot. Is there not a thing for the head?
There is not at this point to track that. And if you look at the avatars, almost every avatar, it's just, yeah. And that's, again, 2D is never going to be as great as Gears, right? It's never going to be a suit. But it's pretty darn close. For somebody teaching, for Jamie, who's teaching Patrick Cantlay and Nelly right now, a degree matters, right? For the majority, the 80% of my clientele, it gives me an opportunity to say, we need to do better here, right? I know if they're swaying 6 degrees, even with the standard differential, that's an issue, right? But we're gaining on it. The more swings we all put in, the better it will get. Yes?
I know you don't work for the company.
Yes, I do not.
Technical question.
Yes.
I teach a lot of
Yep.
stuff at address, the setup position being so influential. If you're taking a face-on video,
Yep.
and then you're reading someone's shoulder position, 11 degrees open, 12 degrees open,
Yep.
that's relative to target line, right?
Totally relative to target line.
So
and
how does it know what the target line is, I guess?
yeah, that's a Phil Cheatham question, right? And I think we're off, right? Sometimes, for sure. That's why when I said I try to get as centered as possible to Allison. And again, I would tell you that that's why I wouldn't tell Jamie at this point in time to be comfortable using it for Patrick, right? But in general, if you see, because you saw the swings that I had up, Nelly was 1 degree closed at address. I didn't take that video, so I guarantee you that was part of the issue, because when I look at her on other video, Jamie would tell me for sure, but I think she's probably 6 open, right? But I think you have to be aware of the standard differential. I usually put 2 on each side, 2 degrees each way.
It's just trying to confirm what you think you're seeing with your eyes.
That's correct. Correct, and it does it in a way that I find my juniors are obsessed because they love the avatar and they actually pay attention to me now, right? Not that they didn't pay attention to me before I made them pay attention to me, but now it's actually fun for them to practice.
More video game-like.
It is totally a video game-like, and you have to explain to them, like, if you have a really good junior, you have to set this up as best you possibly can to get accurate data.
And the accuracy of the data will be greatly influenced by your
100%. If they don't put the right club in, if they don't, it's going to matter, right? It's like working on TrackMan and putting numbers down for a driver and then sending it off to a fitter and they think it's an 8-iron. I mean, it's just absurd, right? Your path numbers are going to be different. Your angle of attack is going to be different. It's the same for this.
Thank you.
Yep. Did you have a question?
I was just going to say that probably a pretty good way to kind of mitigate that would be have an alignment rod and then have one perpendicular to
Correct, and a tripod.
Yeah, tripod.
Correct, which I didn't do. But yes, because I didn't want to throw it in my suitcase. Yes. Anybody else? Yes?
It doesn't track the club in motion, correct?
It does not track the club head in motion.
Not yet.
It tracks the hands. Tracks the hands. But that's the kind of thing that I think is making it, at least in my world, better for me, is we have 50, you know, quote unquote top teachers who have been acknowledged by sections and as ambassadors giving us feedback, giving all the advisor group and the ambassador group feedback that we then take back to IT and say, we want a voiceover, we want to be able to flip, we want a tempo tracker, we want a club head tracker, and then they build it. It has a huge amount of investment behind it, including the PGA of America. So we're trying to make it better. It is G. Haley's. Yeah, that's correct. And Stephanie Ways, and others. And they have webinars every week. You're welcome to hop on some of those. Check it out. Any other questions about coaching? Yes?
I just had a quick question about the fix that you recommended.
Yep.
If she's missing left and she opens her front foot more, I keep thinking that she'll go more left.
Yeah, she would go more left so long as if you're not looking at chest as well, right? But we're going to work on X factor stretch so that that doesn't happen.
I see. So keeping her shoulders closed more on the downswing so the club comes
Correct.
more inside out as she's doing it.
Correct.
I understand.
Yep. But great question. Because yes, for most people, they're just going to pull it more. And then they're going to hit pull hooks. Right. And then you're fired. Right? Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry about all the mic issues. It was a pleasure. Should have worn a skirt. It's hot out here.
So ladies and gents, we'll head up to lunch here. So right back where we started this morning. I know when we get there, we have a couple questions we'll run through real quick while you're eating. We'll keep going through our options. So much, Suzy. You were amazing.
Oh, you're welcome.
And love your candidates.
You're welcome.